LeBron James has been back in the center of the ring culture debate, and this conversation has been building for over a week now. It really picked up after comments from Tracy McGrady, where he suggested that if you placed him in Kobe Bryant's situation alongside Shaq, he could have won multiple championships. But that sparked immediate pushback from fans and analysts who pointed out that McGrady actually had strong teams of his own in Houston, with players like Yao Ming, Ron Artest, Luis Scola, and Aaron Brooks. That roster was deep, competitive, and even pushed top teams in the playoffs, including stealing a game against the Lakers during that era. Injuries were definitely part of the story, but the point people are making is that opportunity was there. And that's where the larger conversation comes in. Durability, health, and timing all matter when you talk about championships. It's never just about talent or fit, it's also about staying available when it matters most. Then LeBron James weighed in on the broader idea of ring culture, basically questioning why championships are discussed ad nauseum when people evaluate greatness. And that's where things get interesting. Because many fans point out the contrast. LeBron himself built part of his legacy by winning titles in multiple situations, in Miami with a super team, then back in Cleveland, and later in Los Angeles during the bubble season. Championships have always been central to how his career is measured. So now the debate feels a little conflicted. On one side, people argue that ring culture gets exaggerated, and greatness should be more than just championships. On the other side, critics say you can't separate legacy discussions from winning titles, especially when the same player has both benefited from and been judged by that standard. And now, with current conversations shifting toward whether anyone will realistically catch Michael Jordan in championships or legacy status, the pressure and comparisons are only getting stronger. So the real discussion becomes this: is ring culture an unfair way to judge players, or is it still the ultimate measure of greatness in the NBA?
LeBron James doesn't have a problem with ring culture. He has a problem with more rings culture. Because LeBron has curated his career around ring culture. Because if he didn't, LeBron James never goes to South Beach. He went to South Beach because he understood that as individually dominant as he was nothing without those rings. And what's funny also, too, about LeBron is the fact that he's talking about the accumulation of something when that's the exact argument that all of his fans, all of the people that say he is the greatest, use.
LeBron James has once again found himself at the center of the ring culture debate, and this time, the conversation is getting even more direct. Ryan Clark recently broke it down in a very blunt way. His point was simple: LeBron tends to embrace advanced stats, analytics, and different ways of evaluating greatness, but when the discussion shifts toward championships, suddenly ring culture gets questioned or downplayed. And that's what sparked the reaction. Some people feel like the conversation around LeBron is starting to drift into narrative control, almost like trying to reshape how certain moments in his career are remembered. Even things like the NBA Finals series against the Dallas Mavericks are being relitigated in different ways depending on who's speaking. At the same time, it's important to step back and look at the full picture. LeBron has built one of the most accomplished careers in basketball history: multiple championships, MVPs, Olympic gold medals, All-Star selections, and a level of consistency that very few players have ever reached. That's not up for debate. But the comparison with Michael Jordan still sits at the center of almost every legacy conversation. And for a lot of fans and analysts, Jordan still holds the edge. That difference in opinion is where a lot of the tension comes from. Some believe that bothers LeBron, others argue that it's just part of being in the GOAT conversation at that level. Either way, it keeps the debate alive. Interestingly, the conversation is also expanding beyond just players. With former athletes and media personalities stepping into new roles in broadcasting and analysis, fans are starting to look at how narratives are shaped, repeated, and challenged over time. And that's why this discussion isn't slowing down anytime soon. Because now it's not just about stats or rings anymore, it's about how careers are framed, remembered, and debated in real time. And with voices like Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, and others weighing in constantly, this conversation is only getting louder.
when you think about championships, should it take away from your greatness, right? If you're all-time great? No. But it definitely enhance your greatness, okay? It definitely enhance your greatness. Because listen to this. No one remembers all-stars, okay? No one remembers all NBAs. No one remembers all defensive teams. No one remember none of that shit. People remember champions. If I ask you who was the champion in 2004, I know I can think of it right off the top of my head, the Detroit Pistons. Ask me who was the champion in 2000, 1999, 2001, Kobe and Shaq, right? The list goes on. 2008, damn it, it was me.
So I just pulled a few key clips from what Kendrick Perkins had to say, but he actually goes way deeper in a full 5-minute breakdown on his channel, so if you want the full context, go check that out on Road Tripping. But the main point he's making is pretty clear: championships don't all carry the same weight. Perk talks about how much he respects players who stay in smaller markets and still try to win there. For example, he says he'd rather see a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo win one title in Milwaukee than go join a super team like the Golden State Warriors and stack multiple rings on an already dominant roster. In his view, not all championships are equal depending on how they're earned. And that's where the ring culture conversation gets complicated. He brings up how team construction and era context matter too. Some teams were built differently: deeper rosters, longer continuity, and less player movement. In that environment, winning a championship meant something different than it does in today's NBA, where player movement and super teams are much more common. Perk also brings up older legends like Dominique Wilkins and Reggie Miller, great players who never won a title, and even examples like David Robinson, who did win but not necessarily as the primary star at his peak. His point is that simply counting rings doesn't always tell the full story of a player's impact or prime dominance. Then he shifts into how the modern NBA is structured differently. Today's league is shaped by max contracts, free agency power, and star partnerships that often form and break apart much faster than in past eras. Because of that, expecting perfect dynasties the way we saw with teams like the Bulls or Lakers in earlier eras isn't always realistic anymore. He even breaks down how different eras had different advantages, from draft systems to roster stability, and argues that you have to judge players within their own context, not just stack rings across eras and assume it means the same thing. And at the core of his argument, he circles back to this idea: ring culture matters, but it can't be the only lens. Because if you only judge greatness by championships, you end up ignoring context, roster strength, competition level, and the actual role a player had in winning those titles. So the real debate becomes this: are rings the ultimate standard of greatness, or just one piece of a much bigger picture? That's the conversation he's trying to start. Now I want to hear from you. Do you agree with Perk's take, or is ring culture still the most important measure of legacy? A.